Fasten your seatbelts. It's Friday. It's the show. We're here. This is not a normal show. This is not even a normal episode of Anytime, but it is still indeed the Anytime channel. Is this live? No, it's not. But through the magic of presentation and editing, we can make it seem like it is. I am one of your usual hosts, Alden Diaz, here with a special, what we'll call Anytime interviews. We have Anytime at the movies, Anytime news, and now the first Anytime interview. And I am joined by one of the most illustrious friends that I have. Truly illustrious. Somebody that I that I deeply respect. You may know them from the comments of this very podcast. I'm kidding. No, I would never list our comments first. From the Nerd Herder podcast, one of my favorite shows, one of the most joyous shows in Star Wars fandom and other adjacent nerd fandoms. Transformers, Power Rangers, Nicolas Cage, his whole existence, Dracula. This is Cooper Wilcox, who I will interchangeably refer to as Coop and Boop, and that might confuse some people. Just get on board with it.
They'll be fine. Listen, I lead a very interesting life, which is why I'm being interviewed, obviously. But I'm a boop of many names. That's what I'm here for. Indeed.
So this is going to be generally more casual. You're someone I talk to all the time. One of my greatest friends. We don't need to do like a whole friendship origin story. And the reason why I say that comfortably is because we don't really have one.
No, we literally just started talking at some point.
It was just because of Twitter and having a lot of mutual friends. And I would see you and you would see me. And then at some point, I just realized, oh, this is my friend, I guess. And then from there it launched. Like I there's no lore, which is like pretty comforting in an era where everybody seems to have lore. But yeah, so here we are. We're going to talk about, as people saw in the title and in the thumbnail, what it's like to be trans on the internet. Because Boop, I don't know if you heard, but you are trans on the internet. That's my first big scoop of this episode.
This is the first time I'm hearing it. Honestly, that explains a lot. You know, is that why people are so angry at me constantly?
No. Oh, okay. That's because you like the Rise of Skywalker. But so do I. Yeah. So we're in that one together.
If that's my most controversial take, I think I'm fine, honestly.
Hey, look at that. And honestly, can we do this for a second? This photo of you taken today, which I think some people will notice, very funny.
Right in front of that window, right across the room.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again for being here, for willing to be willing to talk about something not sensitive to you, but obviously a thing in the world that is a sensitive topic, that is a hot button issue. And when I say sensitive to you, obviously not in the sense that you don't have feelings about it, but that you are a sensitive person. But you are, what I mean is, you're a very comfortable person. Like, I've never seen you shy away from a topic. I've never seen you shy away from a question. I've never seen you have a moment of, I'm sure you do, but you've never like popped off on anyone for a blunder, you know, for a curiosity. I'm sure we'll get into some of that, of like well-meaning people that are learning and how that might come up in your day-to-day.
Boy, do they.
They try. Bless their hearts. We should also address the fact that you are in the American South.
Yep, Georgia.
Causes a whole other element of this conversation to exist. But before we do all of that, even though this is not an official episode, would you indulge me for a Ben Affleck? Would you like to know which Ben Affleck we are this week?
I've been dying to know which Ben Affleck you are.
So our crack producer team, that's just me. Ken's on the road. At the time of this recording, he's in Boston. I have been sent, though, from the internet gods, our Ben Affleck. Wait a second.
Ooh.
Wait a second. That's Ken Knapsack. That's Ken Knapsack in Boston right now, holding a Dunkin' coffee.
That is Knapsack. I know him when I see him.
How could I have acquired this? It's like I told an AI to give me a grumpy, talented white guy with a beard holding a Dunkin' coffee, and they just ever so slightly missed the assignment. It's pretty charming. Love you,
You,
Ken.
you can't
Anyway,
trust AI for anything these days, Alden.
that is a joke, though. Of course, everybody, haha, laugh at Ken. But if you think for a second that I wasn't gonna have a Ben Affleck, you're wrong, baby. Ben Affleck.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
that is
Oh
a
yeah.
hell of a choice, my friend.
For the benefit of the podcast listeners, this is Ben Affleck in red leather as Matt Murdock, Daredevil in 2003's Daredevil. I picked this not only because it's one of my favorites, but because you, like me, enjoy a late 90s to early 2000s sexy schlock.
Boy, do we. Like, that is. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and claim that that movie is a masterpiece of film. I enjoyed it. You can take what that means or leave it, you know?
Yeah.
You know my film history.
Yeah,
You follow me on Letterboxd.
boy, do I. You are probably one of the quintessential vibes first people in our friend group and in the overall space. And on the Nerd Herder podcast, the entire thing is led with love. There's not a single episode of that show that chases a trend in any way.
Yeah, I mean, but then who cares? At the end of the day, if I'm gonna podcast, I'm gonna podcast with someone I like. Number one, and number two, if there's no vibes, I'm not going.
Like, if there's no vibes, I'm not going. That could be a shirt. That could be a shirt. You guys should make that a shirt. I agree. And of course, that co-host we should mention is your just like darling of a spouse, John, who's on all those episodes as well, who is like genuinely, and like sometimes we say nice things about each other's partners because they're our friends too, or we want to make our friends feel good, but like genuinely the nicest person. And like, you know that I'm honest to a fault, and that I would not say it if it wasn't earned. Like,
no, like he is too good for me in a lot of different ways.
Perhaps for all of us.
Exactly. He is
perhaps for this earth. Yes, exactly. Last thing before we jump in, I created a special disclaimer, which not only fits for you and the topic and the specificity of how I feel about talking about something as important as trans rights, and as the trans experience, an experience which is not my own, but like many other things, the Ukrainian experience isn't mine, the Palestinian experience isn't mine, the gay experience isn't mine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we want Anytime to be a place of openness and of acceptance. However, what we will not tolerate is intolerance. And so today, presented on the official Anytime Purple, I give you Fix Their Hearts or Die.
Yes.
He had to appear in a Cooper episode. David Lynch, in character, of course, from the third season of Twin Peaks, from The Return.
Alden, if you let me talk about Twin Peaks, you know I'm not going to stop.
I know. So we will move off of this, but this is the disclaimer right here. This in a sentence about a trans character. We will talk about this issue, and if you take issue with it, I will delete your comment. I will ban you, and then you can fix your heart or die. And so that's where it is. This is not a, oh, I see your side. I don't. Sorry. This is, neither does Cooper, neither do any of our friends. Trans rights are human rights. Hashtag, it'll be below. Anyway. So I have no notes for this because I don't like notes. And I know with you and I, we could be here for 3 hours, but we will rein it in. This is going to be compact in a way. And for everything, I think it should be noted before we even really start with a question. There are angles on this that we will not touch on because of time. There are angles on this we won't touch on because of just frankly what people are comfortable with and what you're comfortable with. And also, not to speak for you, and we should actually start here if you want to jump in on this. Talk to me about the very concept of talking about something like the trans experience or the
Mhm.
religious experience or whatever, anything that we'll get into, um, with any type of journey in the world of gender, knowing that it is just yours, but that there's always that as Hunter Schafer actually spoke about this week, being probably our most prominent trans celebrity of the modern era, of all time, is a much bigger conversation, but definitely of the 2020s. Her perspective on, I also don't want to like have to speak for everybody every time I open my mouth. So
Yeah, for sure.
how do you feel about that?
I mean, like you said, it can feel like a minefield sometime being trans on the internet, because just like in real life, you could walk into a scenario and be completely blindsided by the people that you interact with. And
Mm,
it it feels like it has gotten to be a much safer place. Don't get me wrong. It is
mm,
a fantastic place to be in on the internet, because you're surrounded by queerness if you choose to be, if you curate your experience on the internet, like you should. Do not be afraid of the block button, for God's sake, or for any deity you like sake.
mhm,
um, you should not have to deal with transphobia. You should not have to deal with homophobia and anything like that. Anybody who doesn't like you, whatever, dog, peace. I'm not interested in having a conversation. But sometimes you get so blindsided by how hurtful people can be.
mm,
And it's a lot of the time, it's people that you never expected it to come from.
mm,
But, you know, that's part of being a human. There's this fantastic Welcome to Nightville quote, where he's talking about, I, this is an approximation, don't hold me to anything.
mhm,
Love is hold having someone hold a knife to your chest and trusting them not to plunge it in you. You know,
mm,
that is the unbearable weight of being known. Uh, I think it is incredibly important to have these conversations, to talk to other people about your experience, and understanding that there's people that aren't going to get it, but there is a chance that there is someone who needs to hear it. You know,
mm.
I might have just rambled about nothing for a
No,
couple seconds.
that's
It didn't even
powerful.
have
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, it's the what I gathered from that is like live in your truth and choose peace,
yes.
but also know that when you do speak, there is power there. There might be the younger Coop who is on a similar path,
That poor
and
kid.
they've and they've got, some random username and an R flag means death profile photo or whatever, and they are like, oh, there's someone a little bit older than me in this space, and and I mean, even right there, like, they're older than me, they made it, like,
Mhm. Oh,
they made it to the next stage,
yeah.
which is a thing that has really struck me talking to a lot of queer friends, and as I've started to learn more and to try to be an aware friend, is the immense. I wish I could remember who said it to me, but there's something in my mind, like maybe I read it somewhere, like the beauty and like the power of like seeing an old queer or trans person.
Oh, for sure.
And so talk to me about your early before yourself perceptions. Like were there people? Were there teachers or coaches or even like a cousin or somebody that was outside in any way outside of the
Mhm.
expectations of like the household and the family, and this is what we're supposed to be?
If I'm being completely honest, no. I backstory time. So I was
Please.
raised in mostly the rural South, um, by pastors. Like that, I both of my parents were pastors growing up, and I grew up in an environment of very conservative values. Very, this is the expectation of you. and we're going to hold you up against it for your entire life. And so there was not a lot of wiggle room in that. I think the first time I ever like experienced anything to do with queer people was logging onto Tumblr when I was like 15, 16, I think, something like that. But that also opened the door to, wow, I identify a lot with some of these people and some of these stories. I wish I could do that. And I will say, before that, I just realized that because I was looking at a figure over here. I did discover Eddie Izzard at like 14, 15. I know. So surprising with my personality as it is today. But yeah, I was like 14 or 13, something like that. And I was scrolling through comedians on YouTube and Eddie Izzard came up and I was like, you can do that? You can like be other than what you are supposed to be. And she is honestly my favorite comedian to this day because of that experience. And because of, you know, how many doors she opened, not just for, you know, my sense of humor, but for, you know, trans people all over the place. I mean, back in the day, they were still calling people transsexuals, and she still referred to herself as transsexual. And I think we have so many more words to describe it, but I still like calling myself a transsexual sometimes. I think that's perfectly fine. Like it is one of those things where it makes you realize that queer people have always been there. They just weren't in my line of sight for the longest time. Like I don't think I would have had those. Well, I probably would have felt like I was a guest in my own body for my entire life if I hadn't, you know, finally discovered these queer experiences. But it makes you wonder, you know, what if I hadn't, you know, seen queer people ever like my parents wanted me to? Because I was raised in a house where if any hint of gayness was on the television, change the channel immediately. And I understand as an adult, like that's what they were raised to do. They were doing what they thought was best for me and my siblings. So I'm not terribly mad at them. I've come to understand, you know, they were doing their best while we were being raised.
What kinds of, well, that's going to be a heavy one. Table that for a second. Real quick, just on the like, let's prevent media and fiction from bringing it into the house. My first inkling at all ever that there was any gender variance and that there was any existence of a same-sex couple was Harvey Firestein and Scott Kapoor's characters in Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So Robin Williams' brother in the film is Harvey, and he goes to him to create the character and says, he knocks on the door and says, "Can you make me a woman?" And he goes, "Oh, honey, I'm so happy."
And as adults, we get that joke.
And as a child, I was just like, "Oh, why is he so happy? Like, what does that mean?" And then later on, when the kids are like, you know, who helped you, you know, whatever, and he's like, Uncle Frank and Aunt Jack. And I remember being like, I don't understand why he called them Uncle Frank and Aunt Jack. Aunt Jack? And like, of course, we're not condoning throwing around and like that's up to individual families to decide what they can do and what they can say. It is not cool for you to presume to call one person the wife or the aunt. That's to the viewers, not to Coop, who knows more than I do. But depending on the topic, if you want to talk about like corn during like the colonization era or whatever, then
not get me started because I will.
I know you will. The master of many niche topics.
Talk about the Fertile Crescent for a minute.
The Fertile Crescent. Sorry, let me make a Fertile Crescent thumbnail, and we'll just change this topic. That's more interesting. No, but that was my first. I was like, oh, and then upon rewatches, like maybe elementary school, I was like, they're married. Like it just completely. And then you get more examples as you go. I remember the first time I met somebody who was bisexual. I remember the first time I met somebody who was trans, and those were like my mom's coworkers in different jobs and things. And then that normalization of like it starting with a story and then moving into like, oh, I remember from that thing, you're like that thing. So was there anything that made it through the cracks that your parents didn't catch? Something that you were like, ooh, this is my movie.
Welcome to Nightville. There is
Okay.
a gay couple that is pretty much the center of Welcome to Nightville. My parents just thought that I was listening to a podcast.
Right. Because it sounds like that. Because for those of you who don't know, it is presented as terrestrial classic radio.
Yeah, and it is fantastic. Love Welcome to Nightville. That is also one of the cornerstones of my personality, if you couldn't tell. But yeah, that was one of the many things that kind of crept through. I remember this was back when you could watch movies on YouTube. Forever ago, watching the movie where Patrick Stewart plays a gay man, and I cannot think of the name. Like,
while you talk.
Yeah, like it was one of the first like gay culture movies that I ever watched. I remember like finding The Birdcage on a whim and watching that, and like there were these little breadcrumbs that I was able to kind of sneak past, but it was always done like without the knowledge of my parents. It was one of those like, I don't think I can talk to you about this, so I'm just not gonna kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't stop me. Like, look at me.
By the way, you're talking about the 1995 comedy romance film Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, that's the one. Very good movie. I wish I could remember any other plot point. But it has Patrick Stewart in it, so it's fantastic. Like, I should probably watch that movie again.
Yeah, maybe Jeffrey movie night. Maybe that's the move. And then you'll look back and have so much, like, that's got to be interesting too, is like being at a different place in your journey and then looking at older stuff.
Yeah, the only thing I remember really about the plot is that Patrick Stewart's boyfriend, husband, fiance, I don't remember, was in the movie or in the show Cats at the time of the movie.
An amazing
fact. Star. Like, I don't know, man.
How do you approach, and then we'll get back into the family stuff, how do you approach looking at the examples of yesteryear within their context, but also, with connectivity to where you are? Like, can you still find something in a Jeffrey or a Birdcage or anything, knowing that those were 90s attempts at doing this? Whereas the kids now, obviously, not only do they have each other and the ability to find community in 0.2 seconds, if they are so able to with their households, but they have examples that obviously are way more, not, I don't say well thought out, because I'm sure they tried when they made these things, but
there were thoughts
more conscious. Yeah, more conscious.
I feel a great sense of nostalgia looking back on old queer movies. I have a great love of camp, obviously. You know this. I think there are a lot of gay movies that probably, it could have been done better. Like, I think of Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julianne Moore. Classic gay cinema. You have to watch it at least once in your life. Are there things here and there that probably could have been a bit more sensitive? Yeah, but it was the 90s. I have so much love for movies like that, movies like The Birdcage, that is honestly at times a caricature of gay people, but that doesn't make it any less loving and funny to me. I cannot watch Ace Ventura anymore.
Understandable.
As a person. Like,
very understandable.
I loved that movie so much as a child, but being an adult now and seeing how transness was handled as a disgusting, fearful thing, I can't enjoy it as much as I used to,
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you can't like Ace Ventura. I still quote it all the time It is impossible not to love a Jim Carrey movie, but you know, icky kind of.
Yeah. What you took from it are the laughs that stuck with you, the quotes, the lines, the persona.
Yeah,
But you don't need to go back and revisit scenes that are uncomfortable and historically a little harmful. And
yeah.
I had this conversation with our mutual friend Andy, and they had a similar comment about like their husband. One of their husband's favorite films is Silence of the Lambs, but
Mm.
with the major asterisk of the fact that it's a deeply disturbed and villainous character, blurring the gender line and creating an expectation back when that film came out of like there's the crazy cross-dressing killer
Mm.
and what is that putting into the zeitgeist. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's and which is something I'd never even thought of with my privileged normal experience of the like everything is catered to me, like
Yeah.
like we're gonna create this box of normal and we're gonna sell it as normal and we're gonna tell everybody that they're normal
Hmm.
and that heteronormativity is the thing.
Exactly.
And
Why don't
so
you get a
it's like,
parade, Alden?
huh?
Why don't
What
you
did you
get
say?
a parade or a month?
I know. Where's my flag? Where's my ribbon? For my plight? For
Your
parades, like
flag is beige.
we've been robbed. Yeah, honestly, like if you've ever know anyone in your life that has seriously called for like straight pride or anything, please bully them. That's when I will condone that bullying.
Wood chipper.
Um, so I was really, I don't know if moved's the right word, but like I found it compelling
Mm.
the way that so early in this conversation you expressed a deep empathy for your parents
Hmm.
who I've never met and I don't know, but it's like, I mean, I hold grudges over nonsense. So it's like it within the context of
Yeah,
that, like so it's like, hey, I've got some earned ones too. But
it's very true.
it's like I cannot for the life of me understand or be able to imagine. I mean, I can try to understand it logically, but I can't fully feel something that isn't my life. So the idea of forgiveness or empathy and kindness when it's about identity is like
Mhm.
immense to me. Like that the courageousness in the trans journey is something that I want to talk about. Like how did you navigate this, which is such a putting how on this is such a fucking loaded thing, but but what were the steps? I'm sure you're still taking them in certain
Yeah,
ways, and what are things that you try to give yourself and your family to navigate? Are you trying to teach or are you trying to curate what you discuss?
I think it's a mix of a lot of different things. I mean, my my relationship with my parents is a very interesting and intrinsic web of things. Like I love my parents obviously. They were my parents. I mean, they raised me. I have a lot of great memories growing up, but at the same time, my parents are boomers. My parents were born in the 50s and the 60s. Like I I can't blame them for never being, exposed to gay stuff or to trans people stuff because they were raised in a very similar environment that I was. Like my dad was raised Catholic. My mom was raised by pastors like I was. Like I hold a certain level of grace for them because they are navigating a world that seems very scary to them. And, I can't say the same thing about because I have three older brothers. All three of them have been incredibly supportive of me and my journey, if you want to call it that. My
Oh, your
my
journey.
unattended wagon flying down the street. Let's call it that. Like
of my descent into
my
the inferno.
my becoming, one might say. Um, but yeah, like it's two incredibly different experiences, and I think that has a lot to do with, generational education. The environment that you grew up in doesn't have to be the environment that you stay in your entire life, but for a lot of people, anything outside of that is terrifying. So I do my best to kind of not water myself down, but to present facts in a way that is helpful and educational. Like, do it a little bit at a time. Like, my mom was the first person to know that I was non-binary, and she reached out and she was like, "Hey, I love you no matter what. I don't know what this means,
Aw.
but I love you."
Your
That's
mom?
my mom.
This is so nice.
Janine.
Janine. Shout out Janine.
Shout out to Shirley Janine.
Janine gang in the comments. Yeah, that's wow. Okay. That's really special. I mean, I mean, I don't have to tell you, and
Yeah.
we have friends of 1,000 different experiences, and I'm sure there are thousands more that we'll never hear or know. But that is to say it's not the case in a lot of situations is an understatement. Sometimes it not only is it not the case, you get the opposite a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So with your brothers and your mom expressing that support, did you feel like, okay, I want to start um my understanding of myself here in the home? Like, was it like a let me figure myself out and just like give me the sanctuary of my room and my space, and like if you see me reading something or watching something or wearing something or whatever, just like don't talk to me about it? Or was it like a like we're gonna all figure this out as a tribe?
It was very much a solitary experience for a very long time. Because like when I first started kind of questioning what I was and how I fit into my life, it was a lot of shame at first. Because like I said, raised in church, a lot of moving parts there, not a lot of acceptance from a lot of people. But as I kind of grew more into myself and kind of got to express myself a little bit more, John was the first person, my husband, John was the first person I came out to. I can't remember if we said anything about John yet. So it's fine.
We talked about how much we love John and how
That is
nice
true.
John is.
He is the best. And he was incredible. When I first started to be like, hey, would you still love me if I was a little bit gayer than you thought? And surprisingly, well, not surprisingly at all, yes, he still loved me.
I wholeheartedly believe in my soul that's exactly how you said it too. Like sometimes it's like, oh, haha, they're telling the story in a funny way. No,
No,
I know that's what it was.
it was legitimately, hey, I think it might be a dude at first, which I was correct in a different way. But yeah, he was very, supportive and very willing to kind of go with me on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
It was me and him at first, and then I got to a point where I was confident enough to be like, hey brothers, surprise.
Mm.
You can use the I have a gay sibling card. And they do. They do. They do very selectively. But it's fantastic to kind of be in an environment where you know for a fact that your family loves you. And I am incredibly privileged in that respect. Because like I have talked to so many people who have had terrible experiences, and I feel so much for them, and I hope that they are at peace. Well, not at peace. That's a, you don't want to say that. I hope that they're in a more peaceful place. I will say.
Yeah, we're trying to kill anyone with our words.
No.
I hope they're at peace wherever they are. Like,
wistfully into the sunset.
yeah, it's that is, it's beautiful to hear that you had that. And I've heard about your family and things, but it's like you never know what's the, and we don't talk about what Cooper's doing. About it could easily have been that if
Mhm.
circumstances weren't as they are. In terms of your journey being within, sitting in the context of the 2000s, 2010s, and now 2020s,
Yeah.
it's different than the forebearers of any community,
Mhm.
uh, where older trans people, it was, the world has always been the world. The world is black-hearted in many ways, but the public-facing element, why in the title I wrote "Being Trans on the Internet" is, like you said, like discovering Night Vale, and it's like
Mhm.
this thing that exists, and it's got an internet community around it, and then Tumblr, people are just openly discussing these things, and now
Mhm.
your social media, which is linked below, this is all inherently a part of it. It is
Yeah.
unabashedly you. It's unabashedly yourself. Your journey's on display, and your affinity for your magic mustache, and like just like all of the stuff. I mean, your marriage and
Mhm.
how supportive John is. What was it like, I guess, realizing like, because I'm a big believer in, like, if you name it, you claim it about anything.
Mhm.
But if you're like, okay, I'm figuring this out, and it was so solitary for a time, what was it like getting to the breaking point of like, oh, no, 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 this is the digital age. Like,
Mhm.
I can I can create myself, my public facing image
Mhm.
can be this thing that I'm also working on.
It feels like breaking out of a locked room sometimes. Like I look back at my social media before and after. I'm not gonna say like that because I've always been trans. I just didn't know what that meant for the
Mhm.
longest time. Like I look at photos from 10 years ago and I'm like, you are so sad. You
Mm,
are such a sad little creature, and I am so sorry that you felt that way for so long.
mm,
But it's it's a revelation to be like, oh, I don't have to be, it doesn't have to be like this. And if you're wondering, no, it does not have to be like this for you either if you are in the closet. Like, you will reach a point where you get to leave the closet if you're in the closet. Like, nobody deserves to live in an environment like that. And it's a freeing feeling, but it also feels like so much responsibility because, like, you are not just worried about yourself anymore. You're worried about all of the queer youth that might be following you, and you want to put forward a really good image of your life and show them that it gets better. But there are times where it sucks. Like, I have sat down and cried because of people on the internet before,
mm.
and all you can do is your best. And it's a very good thing to share the negative as well as the positive. It doesn't all have to be negative, or it does not all have to be positive, though. Finding
Mhm.
that balance is very, very important.
Do you find yourself creating a diet in that regard? Like almost not like a regimen for yourself, but
Mhm.
when you feel that pain, or you see how vile sort of the internet can be, um, is your instinct to unplug, or is your instinct of like, I'm gonna go find something else. I'm gonna find the joy one. I'm gonna find
Mhm.
the equal and opposite power.
My initial reaction is always deep seated rage, because I inherited my father's temper, and having to fight back the urge to completely eviscerate this person and sick all of my very wonderful friends on them. But I think I am getting better at just blocking and scrolling away at this
Mhm.
point because that's all you can do sometimes. Sit down and watch an episode of Twin Peaks. I mean, I'll be fine. That
Yeah,
person can be as desperate and pathetic as they like.
and as we have previously established, they
Fix
can
your
fix their heart
or
or
die.
die. Um, Now, in terms of the internet of it all as well with your journey, so as I love the way you phrase that too, of like it isn't before and after. It
Mhm.
always was. It's just about the self perception and the realizations and we make fun of the word journey because it's like such a Facebooky word at this
Yeah,
point. Like, tell me about your journey with they'll use journey for like my journey, my Duolingo journey. Like it's like the word journey used to sound so epic, and now it's been like
exactly.
reduced. Quest.
I am currently
Quest.
fighting the Cyclops on my journey. I'm like
Yeah, right.
here on the hero's journey circle or whatever. I don't know.
But in that regard, of your perception of yourself, then your mother, then your brothers, and John, and it being now in your your foundational family and in your marriage and in your friend group. Along the way, though, even in the time that I've known you, even if these are smaller changes than before I knew you,
Mhm.
not smaller, but more fine tuned.
Yeah,
Um, Talk to me about how you personally, and this falls into that category of it's never going to be one size fits all, and this is Cooper. We're speaking just about you. This is not, I don't want anyone to listen to this and be like, so that's how it works. Like, no.
no, not at all.
The I know I'm queer to I am non-binary to I am trans non-binary
Yeah,
and fine tuning your verbiage, fine tuning your self-expression, realizing what things you want to like. I hate to again put it in like some dumb fantasy terms, but like you'll understand what I mean. Like, like you're an RPG character equipping the right
yes.
thing.
Oh,
Like, I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna take
that's
this. I'm
important.
gonna take this. So talk to me about that in terms, especially of online, where I think it's heartening sometimes to see people like, you don't gotta pick. You you don't gotta do this. I am this, and this
Yeah,
because it works for me.
exactly. Like I realized at some point in like 2020, hey, you're a customizable character. Do whatever you want. Like it
Mhm.
is completely up to you. It's the journey, if I may. Started. I have never felt like a girl ever in my life. I have always felt like I have been other for maybe that's a little bit of the autism, probably, but like I have never felt like the the girl in the Wheaties box or whatever. So growing up with those expectations and kind of like the image of the Proverbs 36 wife, I tried to fit in that for so long that it was like trying to put on a fursuit that didn't fit, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Like it made sense in my mind when I said it. It sounded kind of weird, but you get what I mean.
It
Uh,
landed. It mostly landed.
it it felt like putting on a human suit. Let's say it like that.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
like gender felt so costumey for so long,
Mm.
and then I reached a point where I realized, hold on, I don't have to put on that costume anymore. I can put on this adjacent clown suit that feels much more, friendly and likable and more like myself. And then I cut all of my hair off and then eventually started shaving my hair, which made me feel more and more like, yeah, I I hate having hair. I hate looking at myself in the mirror, but I don't anymore, if that makes sense. I
Mhm.
feel like I have become Cooper more and more in the past few years once I've started like making these little minute changes to not just my look in general, but um like you said, I've always known that I was queer. I started kind of collecting little words here and there that made me make more sense about who I was. Like I it if I have to put my identity down in labels, I am a transmasc, non-binary, pansexual person who is also demisexual. Those are words that I use to describe myself.
Mhm.
That is not the whole thing though.
Right,
Like there is a lot of things that make me up, but sometimes it's useful to have terms to give away to people, just to be like, hey, just so you know, this is what I'm about.
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky to have a community of people around me who have picked up immediately. Like when was that like it was like 6 months ago where I finally messaged our friend group chat and was just like, hey, just so you know, it's Cooper now. And everybody picked up on it immediately. I'm very thankful to have people like that in my life.
Do you remember my first question? My first deeply unserious question? I don't know if it was in that chat, but it was it was in part of the lead up of like Oscar award season. And it just so happened that there was a clip of Emma Stone talking to Bradley Cooper where she says, "Coopsie poopsie, how are you?"
Oh, yes. I remember, and I immediately was like, absolutely not. I'm going to put the kibosh on that. The Alden can call me that.
Coopsie poopsie is no longer permitted. That's contraband. But yeah, I remember that moment and just like being first of all, like, yeah, cool, killer choice. Like, because knowing you, I immediately made the connection
Of course.
to Dale. But like the ability for you to do that, like, can you tell me what in your best words, in your own words, in 300 words or less, what is it like to hit send on something like that?
Terrifying. Every single time. Like, I've talked about the environment that I was raised in. I think there's a
Mhm.
part of me that still lives in that headspace, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. Like there's a small child inside of me that's like, well, I can't talk about that. You can't say that to people or else you'll get in trouble with God. And God's gonna hate you, he's gonna send you to hell, and you're never gonna be able to make friends anymore. And bad stuff's gonna start happening. So you
Mhm.
can't do that.
Mhm.
But I think I've gotten better at coddling that child and being like, no, we're fine.
Yeah.
Hell doesn't exist.
So
You
like
get
it's like an instinct battle.
yeah.
Like life experience comes up and then you have to like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. You're gonna be fine, kid. I swear to God.
yeah, that's really powerful though. I mean, I think like the ability to do right by old you,
Yeah.
um, that you know, you can't change any of it, but you can honor that kid, in that way of like you now take care of that kid.
Yeah. That kid
Uh,
was a weirdo. And they were so lonely and they were so unhappy
hmm.
that I feel like I have no choice but to have empathy for that kid because they were going through it.
How has, in terms of it's such a huge discussion, and it could be its own thing, absolutely. But like
Yeah.
we are at it's not an exaggeration to say we're at war right now. In terms of and it's not trans people versus non-trans people. It's not Republicans versus trans people. It's not it's people that value humanity and people who don't.
Yeah, that
And like
is legitimately it.
and that's that like I because my perception of it, like I think a lot of us when we're younger and we're angrier, we're just like, yeah, it's the church, trying to go after everybody, and that's partly true. It's the Republicans trying to go after everybody, and that's partly true too. But there's that same grossness. It's in your it's in your Star Wars friend groups. It's on your
Mhm.
favorite podcast. It's in your most liberal friends. It's some of your queer friends, as we've seen.
Mhm.
Those moronic people that posted in support of a certain author, that were like, we are a gay couple and we stand with her. It's like, so
Yep.
that proves it is
Mhm.
not so easily, the line is not so easily drawn. It is about who cares and who doesn't. And so
Yeah.
do you feel in a way that what you've overcome personally, like that the fights have changed, like, or that you like, oh, like you've worked on yourself and like now here you are, Cooper, describing your experience, looking back, your family, all these things. do you feel I guess anger, but like, do you feel that it's a responsibility to like, I have to look at news all the time, I have to do all this stuff, I have to keep up with the different state legislations, I have to do all these things? Do you try to schedule that? Do you try to take days where you're like, I don't know anything about it? Um, because I hate to use the word sucks in a serious conversation, but like, it must just be awful, like, to, I would imagine, work on the personal and then be like, and I also have to work on the societal. Like, why can't I
Yeah.
just have, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I it is so difficult to be a person today in many different lifestyles and many different, worlds.
I'm gonna
But
clip that out as just a 2-second
it's
clip.
just
Person today.
keep
That's
the
it.
heavy sigh and just, oh my God, it is so hard to be alive where we are now.
Mhm.
Um, I do my best to kind of keep abreast of everything. I I follow a lot of queer people on, Twitter, TikTok, uh, Instagram, everywhere I can, just to, do what I can to support people and share their messages out to the world. But it does bog you down so much. Like the situation with Next Benedict, it broke something deep inside me
Yeah.
where I had to like delete the Twitter app off of my phone because otherwise I was going to see their beautiful face wherever I went.
Mhm.
And it's part of being part of a community, I think. To you don't just laugh and celebrate with people, you also have to share in their hurt with them as well. And I feel like that's an important thing to realize, not just for queer folks, but for allies as well, is that it's not always going to be pride parades and gumdrops and daisies and, oh, look, a gay couple on television. That's great. It's going to be a fight, a constant battle to be seen as people and understand that you're in this fight with us. So maybe you might want to act like that. Our issues have to be just as important to you as they are to us, but
Mhm.
that's a different conversation. But yeah, I try my best to be up to date with whatever I can just to stay in the fight with people. But there are times where you really need to step away, and there is no shame in that whatsoever because you are a person. I am a person. I am a person with a heart that hurts and wants to see good things in the world, but sometimes there is no good thing. So you just have to step away.
Yeah, and then there's nothing. It doesn't mean you care less. It doesn't mean that it's just about bandwidth. At the end of the day,
Absolutely.
you're a battery,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, this is where it's a 0 day. Sorry. And
I There were days like a few weeks ago where I was having nightmares about using public bathrooms.
yeah,
That is something that happens.
I yeah, that's the type of stuff that I can't fathom, but like, you try to stay abreast of it, by talking to friends and reading
Yeah.
things. And you brought up Next Benedict, and that, even for me on my privileged outside area,
Mhm.
um, that fundamentally, especially because Next was a child, so
Yeah.
it's like that really broke something in me. I cleared my schedule that day, and I remember, like, just kinda, like, angry crying, and, like,
Yeah.
it was a lot. And I know we talked about Next on the main show, and it was just like, if not the kids, it was similar to the gun control
Yeah.
topic as well. Like with many things, with gun control, with Palestine, with trans rights, it's like, if not the kids, then what are we? Like,
Exactly.
if that's not the line, then so. But to find the love in that same vein, what do you think about the kids right now? Like, what are the, like, have you had a moment of being finding yourself and being like, "Oh, man, I'm the mentor right now?" Has that happened?
Constantly. It's terrifying. I hate it so much. But like I if we can curse on this show a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can curse and to also quote My Chemical Romance, teenagers scare the living shit out of me.
You
The
spoke.
kids are fine. Like, they're gonna be all right, and they
Yeah.
are gonna grow up into little punk, like, insane fighters, and I love that so much for them. And like, it is terrifying when I see like teenagers on TikTok screaming at cops and like
Hmm.
things that I was so scared to do when I was a teenager, or probably, would have been arrested for. But I think looking at the kids of today, that not just the queer kids, but all of the kids in general, I think they're gonna be all right. And I am jealous of them for not just their tenacity, if I can use an old person word, but they have,
They got gumption.
oh, they got gumption for
They got
sure.
moxie.
They what's the name?
Gumption, moxie.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Uh,
those are the two big ones, but
those are the main ones. Yeah, they got greased lightning. I don't know.
they're rapscallions.
Like I feel so much affection for the queer kids of tomorrow, but
Mm.
also like jealousy that they have elders that we didn't have,
Mm.
and I love that for them. Like you said earlier, it is a rarity to see a trans person with gray hair. Like I get so caught up and excited every time I see that on social media,
Mm.
because a lot of our elders we lost in the 80s and 90s to the AIDS crisis, to just terrible acts of violence, to suicide even. Like we lost so many good people, but now there's a whole new generation of people that are fighting alongside our kids, and that's great. I look forward to the future.
And in terms of whether it's multi-generational or in terms of people that their game bag of labels, or whatever, whenever it's a different makeup of some
Mhm.
kind, even within our own friend group. I mean, there are multiple trans people just in our immediate circle, of either podcasters or Star Wars people, or whatever we're known as. I don't know, losers, I guess. Like
Probably.
that we have people that are femme presenting. We have people that don't come down on one of those and don't really use it. We have people that across the whole myriad of pronouns, people with
Yeah.
that believe in God or don't, or are have a partner who's also trans or isn't, like a thousand different variables. For you being trans online, what kinds of things do you learn from other trans people, or surprise you, or sort of just make you go, "Huh, like our community is like even more rad than I even thought it was." Like how what is the trans internet dialogue like?
It is frustrating sometimes, I'll say, because you get people who are from different generations. You get people who are actively learning along with the new generation. You get people who love to police language, which is fine. If you don't like to use the word tranny, that's perfectly fine. Like I personally, it's one of those things, like I feel like it's person to person. If you don't want to use that word, that's fine. You don't have to use any reclaimed slur if you don't want to.
Hmm.
But I think that there is a certain, you know, kind of reclamation of youth that's happening on the trans internet right now, and I love to see it. You get gay folks from all generations sharing old gay art that they found, and I love to see it so much. And it's one of those things, like the internet is an archive of many things, probably things that we shouldn't see. We were on the internet during the no man's land, the wild wild west, one might say. um, but yeah, um, I think the archiving of that kind of thing is very important. Like I've seen so many different people get into Heartstopper lately, which is great. And then in the Heartstopper community, you get people sharing Funhouse, which is a very old queer comic written by a person that I cannot remember the name of, but I'm sure Chris Swift will tell me who it was because there was also a musical about it.
Yes. Okay. I wondered if they were the same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. But yeah, it is frustrating and beautiful at the same time. Like it, the youth can settle down if they want to or not. The adults can also find some space to settle down as well.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of learning going on at the moment and a lot of support too. Like I had no idea about neopronouns until an embarrassingly short time ago. But when I find somebody with neopronouns, I can see and be like, "Hey, awesome. I know what those are now." You know.
And I'm sure you do. I'm sure you approach all of them and say, "Hey,
hey,
hey,
DMs,
hey, you."
So you know.
Okay, so I'll do it since I'm sure some people watching are also thinking it. Tell me about this because I don't know.
Oh yeah, so neopronouns are pronouns like ze, zer.
Okay.
Yeah. Or its is also one that I've seen a lot. It's really anything other than he, him, they, them, she, her, or any, combination of what that might be. Yeah. And I don't feel like I can speak about it much because I don't have any. I don't understand it personally. So, but I know a lot of people who do use neopronouns now. So, hey, if it works for you, it works for you.
We're watching language evolve at a rapid pace and in a lot of very like liberating and empowering ways.
For sure.
And
it doesn't have to make sense to you. Like,
no,
if that's
the power in it.
Give you about queer culture. It's a thing. It's ever changing.
There's so much power, and we're crossing the hour now, so we'll start to wind down. But like there is a power in all issues in saying I don't know. I had a teacher in middle school. He taught computer applications, and you would have loved this guy. His name was Mr. Schneider. Shout out Mr. Schneider if you're out there somewhere. And he was this dude probably in his 40s who wore like band t-shirts tucked into his jeans and like work boots and like was somehow always like he always had the energy of like a classic rock roadie.
Oh my god. My
but
favorite
like
type of man.
But it's like buddy, you're just teaching computers at middle school. So like I don't know what you're greasy about, but like I loved it. It was so cool. And he would always be like air guitaring and like this guy, if you slouched in his class, like I am right now, he would always like get on you and tell you that like if you slouch, like goblins are gonna pull you into their lair. Like dude was wild, buck wild guy. And he had a policy in his class while he was air guitaring and playing Led Zeppelin while we took tests or Queen or whatever else. His policy was if you don't know the answer to a question, you can still get full credit on that question if you write this exact sentence. I do not know, comma, but I am willing to learn. If you wrote that, you got it. And that has been burned in my brain forever because it's such a universal thing. Mm-hmm. That's everything from food to social justice. Like that's just have humility about it. And yeah, and I think it'll be cool for people, I think, to hear from you that even like inner community relations still has that.
Boy, howdy does it.
It's not like you were like, hello, I'm trans. And they were like, oh, here's the official book.
No.
Welcome.
No, there is no book. There is just chaos, and I love it.
Now, in terms of, the last couple of questions. In terms of being you have your personal identifiers, your personal feeling about your self, look, body, career, whatever. when you are sharing it then, though, as a married person,
Mhm.
I've always loved, and trophy husband's not the right word, although maybe it is. Uh,
You know
like
what? Yeah.
cheerleader husband is probably the best too. Like John, like you could, if you even like share so much as like a shit post, John's like, hell yeah, yeah, like is right there always just rooting for you and cheering for you. And you, as you have today, and as I have, use the gendered husband.
Yeah.
John does not use a gendered term for you.
Sometimes. Like it's been
Sometimes does.
he calls me his boyfriend a lot, which makes me blush and get all giggly. Yeah, but
Hunky, very hunky.
for a lot of people, he refers to me as his partner.
Yeah, that's what I hear the most or see the most from him. So I'm curious, like, what is it like to be to have your journey existing individually and together, and have the together conversations like
Mm.
on the side? Like, is it like a, hey, let's kick around this thing, like let's kick around our titles
Yeah.
and our language online?
Yeah, I mean, I we've extolled John's virtues many, many times, and I cannot stress enough how much I just lucked out with my partner and how supportive he is and fantastic, and I love him so much. He just got home, by the way. Um, yeah, I mean, for at first, it was a lot of conversation of like, just so you know, this is what's going on with me. And he's always been very much a person of, hey, this is your body. You you are a unique person, you have your experience. And
Mm.
I support that, whatever it is. Like he, he's insanely cool. I like that guy. But yeah, at first it was a lot of, hey, just so you know, I've started using they them pronouns. And then eventually I started using they them and he him pronouns. Just so you know. And a lot of that would be, oh, okay, good to know. I will start referring to you as this now.
Mm.
Like when he came home, the first time when he came home from his new job, and told me that he introduced me to his coworkers as Cooper. I cried legitimately because that was the first time
Ooh.
someone outside of us
Yeah, yeah.
knew me, and
Hmm.
that is an incredible experience to be. It is the burden of being known and loved. It is a heavy weight, but you know what? It's so incredibly worth it.
Now, in terms of, you mentioned his job,
Mhm.
in terms of like you, whether it's work or any time that you have to engage with this unfortunate thing we call society, like
Mm.
what are the processes, the personal processes, I guess? Because, like, if we lived in a better world, companies would have processes too, but obviously companies are horrible. Um, what kinds of things do you do to create your uh not territory, but yeah, maybe territory? Like, how are you staking out your ground and needs
Well, I set up a
in these
little
spaces?
fort first,
Yeah, I
and then I.
catapult things.
It's a trebuchet. Thank you very much. Uh, Trebuchets are much cooler and more fun to say. Um, but yeah, I at my job I work for the government. Yeah, I
Boo.
know it sucks, but there is a certain amount of vetting that people go through, not just like casual work acquaintances, but I have to know you're not a shitheel before I say, hey, just so you know, stay them if you don't mind. But also, more recently, when my coworkers have gotten more comfortable with me, I've been able to kind of correct them and be like, hey, I don't really go by my legal name. It's Cooper, actually.
Hmm.
And, so far, no resistance because, that's always a horrifying possibility that can happen in the world that we live in today.
Yeah.
I use the gender neutral bathroom at work, which I am lucky enough to have one at the place that I work at.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, it's a day-to-day kind of like struggle, not struggle. It's a you feel it out as you go along. Like, cause
Yeah.
I dress like this all the time. I'm a person with my head shaved. I am visibly queer as a person in general. So I do, come off to people more our age as like, oh, I see you. But I do get misgendered a lot. If it's an old white man who possibly has a gun on him, I don't correct them. Ever. Just I don't do that.
The pause ever. Yeah.
Listen, man, like I said, we live in Georgia. There is always the possibility that I could run into someone who wants me dead.
Yeah.
And that's just part of life.
So is it fair to say that you approach it with I'm going to start with polite information giving,
yeah, for sure.
And we will see where it goes, and I'm prepared to fight if necessary, but would prefer not to. You're Jedi trans. It's
exactly.
like I would love to approach but lightsaber on the table, as George told Dave Filoni. Like, this is how we negotiate.
Exactly. I am always prepared for aggressive negotiations at all times.
Love that. And so I guess since we're, we gotta wrap this, but I would love to talk about this more, both on and off air. We mentioned Jedi, and we're at an interesting point with our fiction, and we'll end in a fun place, a nerdy place, appropriate for you and me and Nerd Herder and everything that we do. Star Wars is at a place now where we are finally starting to like make some headway. Publishing has always been ahead because smart people read, and Star Trek has always been legions and miles ahead because it's Star Trek, and like it at least comparatively to Star Wars,
for sure.
Yeah,
comparatively miles ahead.
Comparatively, out of the major IP, probably gets the first place trophy
for sure.
And then there's ups and downs across Marvel and DC and comics and Image Comics, and it's always a mixed bag. But in general terms, with like Acolyte coming up and High Republic has non-binary characters and trans non-binary characters, and what is it doing for your experience as a fan, as a trans person, or as a trans fan to see this? Like, obviously, yeah, feels good would be the quick, easy 2-word answer, but like,
for sure,
does it feel like younger Cooper that you take care of is being like validated by some of these things?
Absolutely. Younger Cooper is doing backflips in their head whenever I see the hint of a gay character now, because it feels validating. Representation is so incredibly important. Representation done well is also incredibly important. Like, we're both fans of Our Flag Means Death. As soon as Steed and Ed kissed, I screamed legitimately, because like that is such an incredible thing to see on television in this year of our Lord Mothman.
Because maybe 10 years ago, even if it was still a great show, it would have been the fans know.
There would have been a meaningful look.
Yeah.
Like, as someone who is watching through Deep Space Nine right now, there's a lot of meaningful looks.
Yeah. And I mean, we were there for Sherlock. We were there. Like,
I wish I wasn't.
We lived through that era of the internet,
I remember.
What do the kids call it? Super Hulock? Yeah. God. Oh, God. But yeah.
The 10-year anniversary of the Mish Apocalypse just happened, and I just... God.
Yeah. But that's good. That makes me happy. And, we're dating this episode a little bit, and that's fine. But like with the Acolyte coming out, this being the thing, is the reason why we're friends, Star Wars. And
the only reason we're friends.
The only reason. If it wasn't for that, I'd hate you. It's the like first show and first live action Star Wars of any kind being led by a queer person, and then therefore definitely the first by a queer woman, because that's how logic works.
Yeah.
And their wife is in the show, and there's going to be trans people in the show, and like that's just got to be really, really rad to see, like, even in fantasy, like,
Oh yeah.
that the time is now.
I am ready to cry. I am so ready.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to talk to you about it. Once again, we would like to emphasize Fix Your Heart or Die. And Cooper, thank you again for your vulnerability, your time, your willingness to chat, your comedy, all the things that you are. Very, very, very glad to have had even just an introductory version of this conversation. Because I know so much about you, but there's also like 1,000 things I don't know. And that's the sign, I think, of a nuanced person. If I
I
knew
am
everything
humble.
about you, we'd probably be bored of each other. Um,
That's true.
but yeah, so why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? I mean, you're active in our comments all the time, so now people will know, like, oh, that's Cooper.
I'm down there.
But yeah,
That's the only place you can find me. If you look down in one of your shoes after you've gone camping and you just sort of tap it, I might fall out like a scorpion.
oh,
That
cool,
could happen.
rad.
Yeah, you can find me at Boopenheim MEW on the Twitters. Be forewarned, Dracula Daily is about to start. I am not responsible for anything that comes after.
I love that.
Yeah.
Simple, easier. Oh, and of course, at opening night for all Nicolas Cage releases, from now to
There's
the
a
end of
few.
time.
Oh
Yeah,
my god, long
you're
legs. I'm so excited.
you're eating good. Long legs coming up. Yeah, absolutely. And then for me personally, as always, at that Alden Diaz, THATALDENDIAZ. Anytime on air is the social media handle for Anytime, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, all those places. Some of which I don't even use, but we're there. All the links down below for Cooper, Coop, Boop. I actually just changed because in my phone you were Boop for the longest, because when I met you, that's just what everyone called you, and still do. But then I was like, I want to change it to Cooper. Then I was like, but I don't want to not have Boop on my phone. So I just wrote Coop Boop, as if Boop's your last name. So
I
that's
mean,
where I'm at right now.
that's so nice because I have you in my phone as Alden, as AULD.
AU?
Yeah, because of that one time you spelled your name wrong, or someone spelled your name wrong, and that's just stuck with me.
Hell yeah.
So you're Alden
I respect that.
in my phone.
All with an extra aw on it.
Alden.
So yeah, all the links are down below. The Ken, like I said, Ken is on not vacation. He's working. He's a working comedian out in Boston. So he has been on the road, but we will be back with your regularly scheduled programming here. Weekdays, not weekdays. Starting, it's on a weekday, so I guess that qualifies. Fridays at 11 Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern is the show. More Anytime at the Movies, Anytime news, and interviews like this one will be popping up. So in the meantime, remember, it's good to not know things sometimes. Just admit it.